that it is detrimental to our own survival as well. So it's really a tough kind of like a line to walk between fear and trying to understand what the things are out there that we don't understand.
Yeah, there's so many things out there, from little people. I was talking to Mary about that. She had a report and photos of a miniature person, like stood about 2.5, 3 feet tall, out in the woods, out in North Carolina, naked, and it was not a human as such. And then I guess when they were building one of the colleges, she has proof that they found skeletons and stuff like that, both of giants and of little people. Little people. We're talking a couple feet tall.
Wow.
And the next thing she said that they found the remains, and then all of a sudden the government came and got them, and they were transported to some type of college, and they totally disappeared.
Yes, exactly. I even have a story that I've heard from one of our UFO team members. It's actually his wife related this story to us at a recent meeting where she was going to the back woodpile in their suburban home, and she swears she sees a small being, very small, like less than 2 feet tall, sitting on top of the woodpile, and it was dressed kind of like it was either a gnome or an elf, and it had green outfit on and shoes that were made out of some kind of material that were not leather. And she swears that this thing was there a second, and then when she turned around to try to find her husband and turned back, and it was gone. And that has really changed her whole outlook on the whole idea of little people existing and actually coexisting potentially with us right next to us in our suburban homes.
Well, I got a guest on, Samantha, who's going to be on the show on the 9th, talking about little people. We're talking little people right here in Washington State, out in the woods. So I mean, we're going to be talking about that for like 2-3 hours on I believe the 9th is on Monday. So that's going to be interesting. Yeah, I do think that there were giants, because I've had some of the major guests, who've done research on giants on the show in the past. And there's been too many cases of skeletons and just various things to prove that they did exist.
Oh, and we've got, if you take some of the biblical stories quite literally, there are all sorts of stories of giants. The fact that the inhabitants of the land of Canaan looked upon the Israelites like they were grasshopper size compared to them. All sorts of stories of even nowadays you'll see the stories of skeletons supposedly that are being dug up that are actually giants, and potentially had the red-haired giants, roaming around in North America even. And that's fascinating stuff. So if they have the ability to be giants out there, they definitely have the ability, you would think, to be small people as well, doing the same thing, let alone the fairies, the gnomes, the leprechauns, and all of those historic stories and fables have got to have some kind of meaning behind them, I'm sure.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. And, sometimes I wonder, maybe, they talk about another life in the earth, like a big, huge inner earth. And maybe some of these creatures could be, living down there and occasionally come out to, investigate. I mean, it's a possibility. It's like anything else in the paranormal. I mean, they got to be somewhere,
Right. Matter of fact, I just love that old story of Rip Van Winkle. when he goes up into the mountains with his fowling piece and his dog, and he's going out hunting for ducks, and ends up meeting this small group of people in the woods that give him something strong to drink, and he ends up falling asleep eventually and sleeps for 20 years and comes back down to the village, and all of his family his children are either grown and old, or his wife has passed away and he's got the long beard and the whole thing. But those kinds of stories are so detailed and so strongly held and told and retold that I believe that there's probably some fact to the bottom line of where they came from.
Well, not just that. You know, if you go any part of this world, you hear about some of the same things. I mean, if you go into the Amazon, you hear about some of the same things. You go into Brazil, you hear the same things. You go into Russia, you hear the same things. And, you know, now it's more pronounced because of the internet, where people can go on and find anything instantly, or if they see something, they put it on the internet, and by God, you know, 20 million people see it right away. But I do think there's a lot of things out there that we take for granted. We don't even know. Just think about ever so often, like a couple of times a month, you look at the news and all of a sudden something washes ashore from the ocean they didn't even think existed for the last million years.
Exactly. Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. Matter of fact, 75% of the planet is ocean itself, so we have no clue what's underneath there, let alone probably what might be using the ocean for off-world bases with UFOs, and they're even coming out with movies nowadays about the mer people, believe it or not, and potentially alien races who might even live under the ocean.
Or that, or living, you know, like in the ground, and vast, you know, huge cave systems and things like that. We don't know, you know, what all, you know, is involved in our Earth. But, you know, again, a lot of these UFO sightings always seem to, you know, come around water. You know, the one guest I had on, oh, God, I can't remember his name, but when he was a kid, a UFO landed in the hospital parking lot. And, you know, and then took off right away, and it left a burning circle in the asphalt. It just makes you wonder, you know, what is going on. But the thing is, the next day, the UFO was seen in a town 30 miles away. But then the next day after that, there was one right in the area. It came out of a lake.
Yes, exactly. And you find those stories pretty much everywhere you go. And ask the right questions. If people are feeling comfortable enough, they'll tell you these strange events that are happening all around us.
Well, the one, though, it really was interesting is, like I said, about the, you know, the parking lot, you know, where it left a circle about 30 or so feet around, and like mercury metal drops all around it. And, you know, a lot of the townspeople came to look at it because it was still smoking and, you know, all that stuff. And then by morning time, you know, the people went out to look at it again, right? And the parking lot was repaved, asphalted in the middle of the night.
Wow. Exactly. There are stories of those kinds of governmental, deep black, deep state operations that can do those things so quickly to cover up what's really going on.
Well, his father was a dispatcher for that town police department. And, you know, it took the, you know, what the story is, it even shocked the police department because they didn't know, you know, they didn't have no information that the military or anybody was going to come in. And why would they, you know, even the hospital, they were shocked. They got their middle of the night, they got their parking lot repaved. I mean, you know, re-asphalted for free. I mean, just, it was interesting. You know, and I did verify a little bit of his story by making a phone call to the city hall. And they, you know, what I was told, yeah, they had a report that same time frame of a UFO supposedly landing at their hospital in that town. So, I mean, you know, kind of backed up his story. So, again, I mean, How can you prove it? You can't. Why would somebody come out in the middle of the night and repave a parking lot?
Yes, and actually, how could they do it that quickly? That is another interesting question, which kind of begs the idea for me is maybe there is also some kind of ability to control time somehow, to be able to stop time and be able to do things that need to be done and then return it back to the actual time frame that it's supposed to be. Some of these things can only be explained by manipulation, potentially, of time. And we all kind of feel that every once in a while with deja vu and various, anomalous, time frames that we all experience as well. But I often wonder about that.
Well, remember last night, Timothy Cullen, he was a abductee and had his implant removed by Dr. Roger Lear. Again, when, I was talking to him about when he saw that first UFO. He doesn't remember anything. He saw the UFO, him and his wife did, and then, it took off, and he didn't really think any more about it, and then he went to town. It wasn't he went to the doctors, and then all of a sudden they did whatever scans they did, and they found something there. And then, he realized it was no way it could have, been there from that car accident where it was at. And that led him into Dr. Roger Lear. So, he was implanted. But he has no memory of being, taken up on a UFO. I am kind of shocked, though, that he didn't have his wife checked over at the same time because she was pregnant and, sitting next to him in the car. And I would think they would be just as interested in her as than they would have of him. But I guess that was her decision not to be checked over, I guess.
Yes. You always hear those stories, at least we do, of course, on the UFOI team, of missing time. People just can't understand why they arrived at their destination 2 hours late, and they don't understand where the time went. And you often wonder if there's alien technology that can do that and abduct people. Potentially the government has gotten a hold of some of that themselves and are able to manipulate time as well. And, there's the whole Mandela effect as well that kind of lends to that credence to that idea in some cases as well.
Now, I got somebody out there asking if Timothy had regression and hypnosis. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, Timothy, on his first show with me, told me that one thing he had to do is have a psychological evaluation. And, and he went through all that stuff just to, before Dr. Lear would, even attempt to do the removal. Yeah, so that answers your question. Yeah, he was checked over for his mental capabilities and regression, and couldn't remember anything. I think that's what they do is block you because, again, I had that other guest on, Michael, that claimed that he saw 3 or 4 aliens walking towards his bedroom window, and they told him to put his head down on the pillow and go to sleep, and that's what he ended up supposedly doing. But then shortly after that, and he was I think he also worked for the game wildlife, and he would be out, in the woods all the time, and, he enjoyed going out camping and hiking and all that stuff, and all of a sudden he started seeing owls like mad. Everywhere he'd go, there would be a group of owls. And I try to confront him on that. I got a weird suspicion that when he had to be abducted, one is that supposedly that he was, in his bed and they came in walked right through into the room for whatever happened to him. But I'm just wondering if they implanted those thoughts in his mind. So every time that he was out there and maybe the aliens wanted to whatever with him, they implanted that owl thing in his brain. So when he saw an alien, he actually didn't see the alien, he saw owls instead. I'm just wondering, to me, that sounds so much more logical.
Yes, exactly. That's the classic screen memory that so many contactees and abductees and experiencers are reporting as well. They can't understand what happened after they saw this deer in the middle of the road with these giant eyes,